For over 30 years, the UFC has never seen a fighter with cardio like Merab Dvalishvili. This Georgian powerhouse is riding a 12-fight winning streak, and his fighting style is always the same. Charging forward like a bull, muscling his foes to the ground and dragging them into deep waters to drown them with his relentless pace. And if you think this inhuman endurance is limited to the octagon, think again. This is the same man who once dove headfirst into a frozen pond, cracked the ice and his own skull, then smiled like it was just another warm-up. As he reigns supreme as the Bantamweight king, there's no better time to look back at the 10 times Merab Dvalishvili broke his opponent's will to fight. Number 10 vs. Petr Yan. When defending his Ring of Combat belt for the first time, Merab needed no more than 15 seconds to knock his opponent out cold. Dana White and Matt Serra had seen enough and welcomed the Georgian to the UFC. However, Merab had a tough start in the big leagues, going 0-2 in his first UFC fights. The machine was eager to put those losses behind him, and the first stepping stone on his road to redemption was Petr Yan. Merab's takedowns were like a freight train, unstoppable and devastating. He imposed his will on his opponent, ragdolling him for 3 rounds en route to a dominant unanimous decision victory. And this is where a new chapter began, one he's writing in blood. Number 9 vs. Kenney. On February 15, 2020, just before the global pandemic, Merab was scheduled to face Kenney, a second Dan judo black belt. But it wasn't just Kenney's judo credentials that made him dangerous. He also boasted an impressive 13-1 MMA record and was riding a 6-fight winning streak, with notable victories over Brandon Royval and Ray Borg. This time, though, he was facing a different kind of animal. Merab's takedowns worked wonders yet again, as he took his opponent down at will. But the biggest highlight of the fight came in the first round, when Kenney was subjected to a gravity shock treatment. The machine pressed him against the cage, lifted him into the air, and sent him on a one-way trip aboard the infamous Georgian Airlines. He then slammed Kenney to the canvas and hammered in a few nails for good measure. Merab kept dragging the American into murky waters, and poor Casey couldn't shake him off, even with a crowbar. Mixing in his striking with relentless wrestling, the Georgian secured yet another dominant unanimous decision victory. Number 8 vs. Gustavo Lopez. Next on Merab's radar was Gustavo Lopez, a dangerous finisher and a BJJ brown belt. Lopez wasn't the kind of fighter who liked leaving it in the judge's hands. In fact, only one of his previous opponents had survived to hear the final bell. But finishing Merab? That was mission impossible. From the moment the fight started, the machine floored the gas pedal and never let up, putting on a wrestling clinic. Every now and then, the Georgian unleashed a straight right hand, only to follow it up with relentless grappling. His ground game felt like wrestling with a hurricane, and trying to escape him was like grappling a greased-up octopus. Merab dominated Lopez so thoroughly, the judges might as well have clocked out early. That was one more for the win column, one more for the highlight reel, and one more for the Georgian Steel. Number 7 vs. Dodson. Not even 2 months had passed and Merab was ready to get back to business. This time, standing across from him was Dodson, a former title challenger and battle-tested veteran who had been in the game since 2004. Dodson wasn't just some average bloke. Over the years, he had fought the best of the best, earning spectacular victories over the likes of TJ Dillashaw and Pedro Munhoz. But against Merab, the script played out very differently. The Georgian wrestler put the ancient tradition of bride kidnapping on full display, right inside the cage. And when needed, he had no problem launching ballistic missiles on the feet. Merab stayed in the driver's seat while Dodson stoically absorbed everything thrown at him. The mat became his domain, and he ruled it like a tyrant. By the end, it looked like he was toying with a mannequin. While Dodson was one of the best fighters the division had seen, Merab made him look like an amateur, like someone who had never fought before. Number 6 vs. Marlon Moraes. The first time Merab's chin was truly tested came against Marlon Moraes, a heavy-handed slugger known for jaw-dropping knockouts. For some reason, the Georgian decided to play Russian roulette on the feet, trading dynamite with a superior striker. The Brazilian gladly accepted the offer and struck with surgical precision. The way his punches landed, it looked like Dvalishvili was about to become just another highlight for Moraes. But little did anyone know, Merab's heart was bigger than the Georgian mountains. Moraes attacked like a general leading an invasion, but the machine was tougher than a rusty old pickup truck. He absorbed the shots like a champion, standing tall even when the storm hit hardest. Merab weathered the onslaught and flipped the script. In an instant, he dragged Moraes into his world. From the top, he unloaded a heavy cargo of bombs, forcing the Brazilian into survival mode. Only the bell saved him from an early finish. But stepping into round 2 against Dvalishvili, that's no salvation, it's prolonged suffering. Merab detonated a massive right hand and muscled his opponent to the mat. From there, he was relentless, keeping his prey trapped while raining down punishing blows. After taking a prolonged beating, the referee had seen enough and stepped in to stop the torture seminar. This was one of the greatest comebacks in UFC history. Merab didn't just take a clean shot from one of the division's hardest punchers. He turned the tide and drowned him in deep waters. Number 5 vs. Jose Aldo. On August 20th, 2022, the Machine was matched against none other than Jose Aldo, arguably the greatest featherweight champion of all time, a man who ruled his division for years. Aldo is a living legend with a hit list that includes fellow icons like Cub Swanson, Uriah Faber, Chad Mendes, and Frankie Edgar. His style is built to shut down wrestlers, boasting some of the best takedown defense in MMA history. But even that wasn't enough to stop Merab's relentless pressure. As expected, the Georgian stuck to Aldo harder than a creep to an OnlyFans model. He smothered him in the clinch, never giving him an inch of breathing room. Aldo's devastating kicks and razor-sharp boxing completely nullified. Every time he tried to create space, Merab was already in his face, punishing him at close range. By the time the final bell rang, the decision was clear. The victory belonged to the Machine. Number 4 vs. Petr Yan. Next on Merab's hit list was Petr Yan, former champion and widely regarded as the best boxer in the UFC. But against Dvalishvili, having superior boxing was about as useful as a prime minister in North Korea. From the opening bell, Merab wasted no time with appetizers and went straight for the main course. He relentlessly shot takedowns at Petr, who was left with no choice but to fend off the constant siege. This style frustrated Yan to no end. His boxing prowess couldn't shine when his opponent was smothering him every time he tried to breathe. Merab's grappling was like a spider's web. Once you're caught, there's no escape. And once he had the momentum, it was like trying to stop an avalanche with a broom. In this grueling, frustrating bout for the Russian, Merab attempted not 5, 10, or even 20, but a record-breaking 49 takedowns, setting the UFC record for most takedowns attempted in a single fight. Imagine Yan's frustration, coming for a brawl but getting out-wrestled for 5 straight rounds. He was dismantled piece by piece, like a toy being torn apart by a frustrated child. When it was all over, the Russian could finally catch his breath and relax from the Georgian storm. But everyone knew who the true main character was that night. Number 3 vs. Henry Cejudo. While Merab's wrestling has been an impossible puzzle to solve for many, Henry Cejudo promised that he'd be the first to beat the Georgian at his own game, the wrestling department. Now, Dvalishvili had never faced an opponent quite like Cejudo, an Olympic wrestling gold medalist and a former 2-division UFC champion. Henry wasn't just an outstanding grappler. He also had a nuclear option in his hands, capable of shutting someone's lights off in an instant. The elites who learned that firsthand were TJ Dillashaw and Dominic Cruz, and Cejudo was convinced he could do the same to Merab. The first round was somewhat competitive, but in the second, Dvalishvili turned into a boxer, wobbled Henry on the feet, and left him with a leaking gas tank. Sensing the opportunity, the Georgian scored a beautiful single-leg takedown. The Olympian had no answers for Merab's relentless wrestling and was getting completely outclassed in the grappling exchanges. At one point, the Machine even took his time to glance at Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg and chat with him mid-fight, all while holding Cejudo in a chokehold. But the biggest highlight of the fight arrived in the third round. Merab welcomed his opponent aboard and gave him a compulsory tour around the cage before slamming him right in front of Zuckerberg. Merab had done the unthinkable. He out-wrestled and out-grappled the man known as the best wrestler in the division, which makes you wonder, just how good of a wrestler is Merab really? Number 2. Vs. Sean O'Malley. After annihilating Cejudo in front of the world, the UFC matchmakers had no choice but to give Merab his well-deserved title shot, one that belonged to Sean O'Malley. Sugar is a virtuoso on the feet, responsible for some of the craziest one-punch knockouts in the division. But once Merab got a hold of him, it was like trying to hold down a crocodile in shallow water. Dvalishvili entered the octagon like a predator, hunting for his next meal. For 5 rounds, he showcased the beauty of Georgian wrestling, thoroughly outclassing the champ. To O'Malley's credit, he absorbed damage like a sponge, soaking up everything thrown his way. However, he never got the chance to land a clean shot, and when it was all said and done, the judges had no trouble deciding the winner. The UFC Bantamweight division crowned a new king, and his name is Merab Dvalishvili. Number 1. Vs. Umar Nurmagomedov. On January 18, 2025, the Georgian wrestler was matched against Khabib's cousin, Umar Nurmagomedov. Umar was untouchable, riding an undefeated 18-0 record and coming off a huge win over Corey Sandhagen. This battle of the Caucasian Mountains was set to determine whose wrestling reigned supreme, Dagestani or Georgian. Early on, Umar found success with his striking, but as the fight progressed, Merab picked up the pace, pushing Umar to his absolute limit. He stormed forward like a battering ram on a mission. He relentlessly shot for takedowns, and even Umar, known for his elite cardio, began to fade. Merab stalked his opponent like Michael Myers, and as the bout neared its conclusion, the challenger had nothing left to lose. He threw everything but the kitchen sink, but it still wasn't enough. Dvalishvili successfully defended his title, and if Umar couldn't stop him, it's hard to imagine who can. And what's your favorite Merab's performance, fight fans? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more MMA content like this.